Okay, so now when we look at this, remember this one was 17 inches, this direction, and this is 20. So we know we have a very nice 20-inch square here. So now our next one that we're going to be adding on is we're going to be cutting a 20-inch for the sides, and then we'll come back and we will get the measurements for the top and bottom. All right, so now that we've added the 20-inch here on the sides, our top and bottom measurement is going to be 23. So when we get finished, the whole square will be 23 inches. All right, so here are these strips, and these strips are going to be 23 inches down our sides. So that's going to be our next group that we're working on. All right, so the top and bottom measurement for this round is going to be 26 inches. So you're going to cut your top and bottom strips at 26 inches. All right, so this square right now is 26 inches, okay? And we are now on our last row of strips. And I want to remind you that our last row, which is D1 fabric, we're actually going to be cutting those strips 2.5 inches by the width of fabric. Now, if you will remember, everything else has been cut at 2 inches, but this is critical. So please pay close attention when you are cutting this last row, and they are going to be 2.5 inches. And just to let you know, because of the size of these blocks, I'm sorry, the size of each row, you're going to need to cut 8 2.5 inch strips. So please remember that, all right, because that's really critical, because when we are finished, we want to make sure that our block is as close to 30.5 inches as possible. So you're going to cut 8 of these dudes, and we will get those sewn. Okay, so here, let me pop over here. Here is our big giant block, and guess what? We've made 2 of those. So I do want to remind you that don't make one and then go back and make the other. Make each one of them make them at the same time. So do everything around the center, and as you work your way out, do it for both of them. The reason that you want to do that is because most of the time when we're working on something like this, when we sit down and start working on something, we get up and we go away, or maybe we wait a day or two and we go back to make the second one. And invariably, we don't sit the way we were sitting before, and we don't cut the way we were before. So please, please make them at the same time. If you have to stop because you got other things you got to do, you're going to stop at the same place for both of them. Okay, so that's number one. That's important. The other thing I want to remind you of is that you're going to start off, let me put this one down. Okay, you're going to start off in the center and build up. But I want to remind you that one of the best things that you can do for yourselves is to spray starch your fabric. Um, what we're going to be doing with both of these blocks is a little bit later on, as we're putting everything together, this is actually going to be cut on the diagonal, all right? Both of them. And having them spray starched will make everybody behave and play well together. And it'll also help when we cut that on the diagonal, it'll help give a little bit more stiffness to the actual piece that we've got going there, okay? The other thing that I highly recommend is this. as you are piecing, go ahead and cut just what you're working on. The reason that I want you to do that is because this first one is a 5-inch square, as we all know, and then we're adding on these 2-inch with the fabric pieces. And so, yes, the first one, these guys are going to be 2 inches by 5 inches. And then once you get that done, then you're going to press and you're going to make sure and you're going to measure that. And then that's what you're going to cut your top and bottom strips at. If you just bail through and you cut all of them what you think they need to be, a lot of times what happens is because of how we piece and how we press, that's where the inconsistencies come. And so I just want to make sure that that is something that you take the time and you sew and cut each row as you're going. Don't just blanketly cut all of them, okay? So that's my first tip. The other thing that I want to remind you of is pay close attention to your 1/4 inch seam allowance. If your seam allowance is chubbier than 1/4 of an inch, then this is not going to finish at the right size or close to the right size. If you are somebody who does a scant 1/4 inch, great, that's not a problem. But pay close attention to your 1/4 inch. It's going to make it a lot easier on you. And this will be more or less closer to the correct size. Now the pattern actually says when we look at, let me find our little thing here. When we actually look at this guy here, it's telling us that it's unfinished at 30.5 inches square. So I'm going to tell you, my seam allowances are 1/4 inch. And so mine actually is 30-inch square, not 30.5. So if yours is a little bit smaller than 30.5, no worries. But if it's less than 30, then there's going to be an issue and we may have to add on another border. But I'm just wanting you to just take your time, make the 2 blocks at the same time, and measure each one of these before you go on to the next one. And then that will make sure that you've got the correct measurements for the strips that you're adding on. And remember, this is a courthouse steps block. And unlike a log cabin, this is actually, they're pieced opposite of each other. Okay, so that's how this is going to be put together. So anyway, I think this is really a fun block. And be sure and use your easy press pin, and be sure and use your spray starch and press in between each press. Press. That's the only way I'm going to say it. Just press. And make sure that you have no pleats in here, because if you start getting pleats where your seam allowance is, then that's going to make the block shrink up even more. So you will see what we're going to be doing with this in the next couple of steps. So anyway, have fun, and we'll see you next time.